Hi guys, Grant from Penguin Motors. It's evening, so I've got coffee. Right, here we are. Latest update on our Cameron Green V8 Rover engine, Bent Conrod, I think we entitled this one. So here we are. I'll insert a picture next to me. This is most of that engine on the bench. Here it is, as you can see, partially assembled. I'm afraid I've skipped forward in this, couple of reasons. One, most of it you've seen before, and two, for me to film and assemble stuff and then go on to edit it, it takes so much time that I can build 3 engines in the time it takes me to just film assembling a set of rods and pistons and put them in the block. So I'm afraid my customer would rather me get his engine back to him than make lengthy videos. So yeah, that and the fact you've all seen it before. So essentially here we have block, it's been rebored, it's now 20 thou oversize, so slight increase in capacity. That's not going to be a lot. That's going to put roughly it's probably put roughly 40 cc on the engine's capacity, so no great amount, but they are 9.75 to 1 pistons, so that's a useful raise in compression. So apart from that, the block spent hours in the cleaner trying to be cleaned. It's been refaced to give a good face for the head gasket to sit on. Crank was ground. I've had the crank pulley in the lathe and polished up the slightly pitted surface where the oil seal will ride. This is our cam for a shaft for it. Currently, it's not actually brand new. This has done a couple of hours use on the dyno, but it's got no wear in it. It's a Newman Phase 1 cam, which we are going to fit with a set of brand new lifters. Reason being is that I can't be sure that the lifters that were with this cam are still in the same orientation, in the same order. So better safe than sorry, we're just bagging new set of lifters in. So there's our cam. In terms of valve train, we've got what I would call selected set of rockers, i.e. I tend to buy up sets of rocker arm assemblies and sift through them, chuck most of them in the bin, but every few sets we get lucky and I get a good set. Because typically rocker shafts that come out of late 4 litre and 4.6 engines are generally in better condition. Yeah, they're fuel injected engines, they run cleaner, they run on better oil, there's less pollution, and if you get a set that have come out of an LPG engine, they are really clean. But anyway, essentially we've got some good set of used lifters with virtually no wear. You can and the reason I go that route is because a lot of the pattern aftermarket stuff is junk. You can still buy new genuine rocker assemblies from Land Rover, but they're something like £800–900 per assembly. So, you know, spending 1,800 quid on a set of rocker shaft assemblies is way beyond most people's budget. So that's them. Cylinder heads. The heads themselves have been gone through. We've got new seats in exhaust valves, they've been lapped in. And the thing with the new seats is that now all the valves sit at the same height, which is pretty important. The thing with sitting the valves at the same height means that the preload on the push rods and the followers is all the same. Now, it's a subject that's much overhyped, but it still needs to be in the ballpark. They will still need to be reasonably the same, or you will run into problems. So I don't yet know if we're going into chimneys or not, but either way, now that they're the same height, whatever we do or don't do in terms of shimming rocker assemblies will be good. So that kind of just brings us up to date for the moment, I think. So let's get that cam in. We are going to fit the cam on standard timing gears, because the gears that came with the engine are perfectly good, there's nothing wrong with them. So the standard chain of gears, which means we can't adjust the cam timing. You've got to be a fair way up to it for it to affect it. I probably will put a DTI on it and see where it actually times up, because if it's a million miles out, I might have to rethink. But for the moment, the plan is stick it in on the standard gears and see where it times up. Right, something I nearly forgot to mention, pistons, con rods. This is something I've never showed you before, and I'm going to insert a little bit of video footage beside me where I'm actually fitting these. Pins are press fit in the rod boss, which makes they're a pain to fit because you need to press them out. You need to heat the rod enough for you to get the pin in, but not so much you damage the rod. In that, although I have seen them red hot, you don't want to heat the rod enough that it's blue. You certainly don't want it red, but you need to heat the rod to such a point that you can just gently squeeze the piston pin through. Now you've got to push it through fairly briskly, because very soon, as soon as you start to insert that, the pin will start to grow and the rods will start to contract. So it needs to be one quick smooth operation to push the pin through the piston, the rod, and get it in the right plane, because you don't want the pins to poke in halfway out and not much in the piston. So yeah, there's a clip beside me of me doing that. There's no commentary or anything there, because and not even particularly good footage, but it's just, that's how it is. You need to just get on and do it. Incidentally, the cam bearings this were in unusually good condition. Right, so here we are. I've put the sprockets on. We've got the engine top dead centre, number 1 cylinder, and with the engine like that, the flat or the Woodruff key should be parallel with the top of the block. The Woodruff key on the crank, on the camshaft rather, is at 9 o'clock, and the dot lines up with the little arrow thing here. And for a standard chain setup, that's actually quite taut. Right, what we're looking at here, for the problem, that's what we're looking at. Initially, I just dropped 2 lifters into the block, visually put the engine at TDC, and at top dead centre, if you've got it on the overlap stroke, the 2 lifters should stick out the block the same amount. They weren't. Clearly, the timing was a fair chunk off. So, bit of a difficult position because we haven't got an adjustable valve train. So at that point then, I removed the nearly new pattern gears and dug out some genuine Land Rover ones, fitted there. Now, 2 things. One, the chain, which wasn't actually slack in the first place, is noticeably a bit tauter still. And then I went and timed the engine up properly. And by properly, I meant we fit a positive stop to the cylinder, so the piston can't quite come to top dead centre. We put a degree wheel on a crank, and we put a pointer pointing at where we think top dead centre is. And what we then do is we rotate the engine till it hits the stop, won't go any further. We see what degrees the pointer's at there. We rotate the engine back the other way until it hits the stop again, and then we look at the number of degrees the other side of top dead centre. And by tweaking the pointer and going backwards and forwards, we can ascertain true top dead centre. And when it comes to timing the cam, we do exactly the same. We put a push rod, I think this is a fold one. Rover ones are domed at both ends, so they don't work with this. We put push rod on the cam follower, DTI, and rotate the engine until we see maximum cam lift. And then we choose a number a little bit shy of that, and basically we rotate the engine backwards a bit, and then we go forward until we stop at a number 250 thou lift. I keep saying valve lift, but obviously we're talking cam lift. So I stop at this lift point, 250 thou, look at the degrees on the pointer, then carry on forward and we get to the full lift, and then it drops back. And when it drops back to the same 250, again, I look to see what our pointer is. If we stop at, say, 100 degrees after TDC is our first lift number at 250, and then we carry on past it, and the next time we hit that is, say, 130 degrees, then we add the two together, divide by 2, and that gives us our actual full lift figure, because the cam's at full lift for a few degrees. Well, when we time this up, we actually get full lift 115 degrees after top dead center. This cam should be timed in at 110. So 115 is retarded, and that's 115 on the Land Rover gears, which were better. So I've got a bit of conundrum now, because if it had been 2 degrees, 3 degrees retarded, I might have left it, but 5 is a fair chunk. So fast forward 2 days, and I've ordered myself a Cloy's timing gear setup. Now I don't think you can see that from here, but the crank gear in this has got 3 keyways. It's got a neutral one that's advanced, and one's retarded. You used to be able to buy a different set with many more keyways and a steel as opposed to this cast upper gear, but this is all that's currently available. But the offsets are 2 degrees crank. Well, 2 degrees crank is 4 degrees cam. So having fitted up with the Cloy's gear and done the retiming, the cam timing is now coming up at 110.5 degrees. So 2 days ago I was saying we were timing up 115, which was 5 degrees retarded. Well, 110.5 is half a degree out, so pretty much bob on. You're not going to get any closer than that. So yeah, that's cam timing done. Job. Right, time for a quick mini update. Timing cover's on, new set of stainless bolts to hold the cover on. Oil pump gears in, oil pump gears back on. Standard height, early short gears. Why? Well, what was in the engine was actually brand new and didn't look like they'd ever run, so they're new anyway. And I'm not a big believer in the spacer kits and the wider gears. Sure, you know, I can understand everyone likes to see higher oil pressure, but let's face it, this engine has lasted 50 odd years and don't know how many hundreds of thousands of miles, so does it need more oil pressure? With a freshly ground crank and bearings on size, it's going to have more oil pressure than it had before anyway. And you know, what does it mean? It's a number on the gauge, you know. So what if the oil light flickers at idle? He's probably done that for the last 50 years. So I don't see that boosting oil pressure is any real relevance. Quite a few of the cars I've seen with spacer kits leak oil out the spacer kit anyway. So as far as I'm concerned, that most of the P6 engines I do are on narrow gears, and yeah, they run quite happily like that. So I'm quite happy with the standard oil pump gears. Sump gasket, yeah, you can see all the bolts are in here because I'm actually gluing the gasket to the block. Now, I know, you know, I watch another YouTuber, Nick Panaritis, Nick Garage in Canada, yeah, and he makes a big thing that, yeah, the gasket makes the seal, you don't need the sealant. And I agree with that, but I also disagree at the same time. Yeah, new gasket, bolt it up, it won't leak. But I guarantee you, a couple of years down the line, when the gasket's settled and shrunk and the bolts have worked loose, which they do because the gasket's no longer tight, it will leak. So I prefer to glue the gasket to the block, hence the fact the bolts are in there, let that go off, and then I'll fit the sump with a bit of goo. And the point is, a bit of goo. You don't want it oozing out everywhere, and you don't want it in this lovely clean oil pickup. So minimal goo, and actually if you use the real quality stuff, even if a little bit squeegees out, it will stay put. It won't break off like cheap silicone. So yeah, that's it. That's it for the moment. So I guess I better bolt the sump on now. So sump's on now, flip the engine the other way up, ready to put the heads on. We're using standard tin head gaskets. Why? Well, to be honest, they're not that bad. I'm not convinced the composite ones are actually any improvement. And in this case, the thing is that the standard ones are thinner than the composite. So having gone to the trouble to put 9.75 pistons in to raise the compression, the last thing I want to do is put a composite gasket in, which is going to drop it below where it was in the first place. So that's it, gasket dry. But I usually put a bit of weld seal on the back edge of the block, because as I say, these gaskets are actually pretty reliable, but if they do anything, they tend to weep a bit out the back of the block, which, to be honest, is as much down to block and head corrosion as the gasket itself. But anyway, so there we go, standard tin gasket. Right, we've jumped forward a bit here. Heads are on, torque down, 70 pound-foot. I've gone down in numerous stages. What I tend to do is go down in several stages, and at each stage I'll let the engine rest a bit, and then work my way round and round and round and keep going round them until the torque wrench settles and it doesn't pull them any further. Then I'll go up to the next stage. As per usual, with a 14 bolt head, the outer rows are barely nipped up just to stop them rattling out. Obviously you can see rocker shafts are on. There are no shims under the rocker pedestals, it doesn't need them. But I have looked at the list of preload, and we're really concerned if, and this will go against what a lot of people on the internet will tell you, all you're really concerned with is that the lifter is somewhere in the middle of its travel. I normally do this on the engine dyno, not on the engine stand in the engine room, but hey, we can do that. Simply, let's get it on there. Now normally, when the oil pressure comes up, you hear the drill slow down. You didn't hear it slow down there because I've already spun it up, so it's already primed. And I tend to do it with the intake manifold off, and I can hear the air squeeze out and watch the oil bubble up through the lifter bores. And I also look at the rocker assemblies so that I want to see on both sides at some point oil oozing out the rocker shaft. You don't get tons of it, but if you start to see oil ooze out, then you know the feed supply up to the shaft is good. Right guys, intake manifolds, not a very exciting subject, and this isn't the one off our bent rod car, but it is the same HIF6 manifold. As most of you probably know, there's this little vent pipe here. Should be able to blow through it. Unusually, this one I can. There's a lot of you know this little pipe gets blocked up, but what you may not realise is if this pipe gets blocked off, the engine can't bleed air out the top of the manifold, and you'll end up with an engine that's prone to chucking its water out. And quite often you need a drill to drill it out. But there's a core plug in the top and the back of the manifold, and that is not unusual to remove them and find this so clogged up with gunk and casting sand and rust and back there that even if you unblock that pipe, water won't come out. And I had one the other day. I dug out all the rubbish in there, and I poured water in there, and the water still got stuck. It still didn't come out. And I really had to poke and dig around, and in the end, flipped the manifold upside down and took the bottom core plug out. Because in the bottom of the manifold is a little hole. I don't know if you can see it. I'll bring the manifold up. So in the bottom of the manifold, the camera's probably not going to pick it up, but there's a little hole just in there. And that little hole is all that lets the water from the base of the manifold up into the pyramid. So if you've unblocked that tube and you've even scraped the gunk out of that and you still don't get water flowing through there, you probably need to remove the manifold, take the bottom core plug out of it and find that little hole and unplug that. Cheers. Right, so here we are. We're on the engine dyno. Fresh from a little piece on intake manifold. Is there any more on that? Well, not really. I put the slightest radius on the short turn, base of the pyramid, the right angle corner where the manifold bore turns. The carbs are standard almost, except that these particular ones have got the valves in a poppet, in a butterfly, and the idea of the valve is that when the throttle snaps shut and puts a high vacuum in the engine, that valve will open and that would reduce the amount of fuel drawn through and gets unburnt. But obviously that there spring and assembly sticking up into the airstream is quite a restricting to airflow, so I took these out and fitted just plain flat throttle blades, which should help a little bit with airflow. You can't see it from here, but the throttle linkage has had some work, because on a P6 and a P5 you've got a vertical linkage behind this carb. If that link is too short, you won't get full throttle on this carb. If the cross linkage is too short, you won't get full throttle on that carb. So, you know, if you're out there missing a bit of horsepower, it might be you're not actually getting full throttle. So go look at those linkages. Standard P6 airbox, but we have modified it slightly. I haven't cut the snooker off because it's arrived nicely painted, so I don't think the owner wants me hacking it about or trying to put bigger tubes on it. So I did the next best thing. I took out some dirty air filters, but that's not the point. We adapted some longer bolts and put some longer filters for an SD1 in, and as you can see, that's quite a difference in filter length. So not only does that buy you much more service life, I've proved it here on the dyno. If you put longer filters in a P6 airbox, you will pick up about 3 horsepower. So it's not massive, but 3 horsepower just from a filter change in the same airbox in bag. If you can find an SD1 airbox, there's another couple of horsepower to be had. So what now? Well, I've already run this, and in fact I've already run it, dynoed it. It's just about ready and complete. That was a couple of days ago. What I now want to do is I want to do a cold start on it, because obviously the first time I started it cold, it had never run and the carbs hadn't been set up and I hadn't set the timing up. So now what I want to do is do a cold start on it, so we can get together and we can see what it starts like cold. It's only about 5 or 6 degrees today, so it's not very warm. And I say this is stone cold. It's sat for several days now. So what I need to do is turn on the water taps, turn on the pumps, turn on the dyno console, and I will manually hold the choke linkage on, which will activate both carbs. Hit the start button here on the dyno, and let's see what happens. So monitors already, pumps on. Hold the choke on. Press the start button. Right, assuming you can hear me over the extractor fan of Dyno pumps, we're going to do a quick Dyno pull now. We're going to do a quick run from 2,000 RPM to 4,900, just so you can see it and hear it from out here. That's it, our Bedrod V8 is back in its camera green car. So all that remains now to do is actually back the car out, and at the end of it I'll leave you a graph so you can look at what it did. And for comparison, I'll put a graph from this car up. Now this car belongs to a client of mine. He's got several P6s. I've rebuilt most, if not all, the engines. Now this client will only have a bone stock rebuild and no pad parts. He likes everything just the way the factory made it. As obviously we've got a few upgrades to this. So it's an interesting comparison because the graph for this stock one, which incidentally was run on exactly the same setup and exhaust system and everything on Dyno, so that's a pretty close comparison. But the graph I'm going to put up for the stock one is one of the most talky stock engines I've done. They don't always make quite as much as this did, but there you go, I've put a good one up, versus this one. Now, you look at the graphs, they both stop at around 5,000 RPM, relatively abruptly, and there's two reasons for that. These guys, they're not like my Pinto engine customers. They don't want to scream around full throttle 7,000 RPM. So there really is no point pushing a stock on their stock V8 Rover past about 5,000 RPM. They're not upgraded to cope with more revs, so I don't want to rev them that hard, risk breakage, damage. And the other thing is that the fuel system I use on Dyno to run the stock V8s, at the end of the power run, once you get to about 5,000 RPM, it's struggling to keep up. So I don't tend to rev them out. I could do, if I change the fuel system, we might see a couple more horsepower if we take the revs a bit higher, but as I said, what's the point? That's not really what we're interested in. With these, the purpose of Dyno is run them in, prove they don't leak, prove they make good torque, prove they work properly. Job done. So yeah, if we revved it on a little bit harder, we probably with a different pump we'd probably see a few more horsepower. But so what was the numbers? Well, this one I think originally did 211 brake and 211 pound-foot torque. This is very, very close. I think on the graph, the stock one makes it slightly lower down the rev range, but you know, some of that could be different days, different engines. I wouldn't take it as a given that this one is slightly better low down than this. The difference on the graph is small, and in the real world, it ain't there. In terms of horsepower, this one went a little over 150. This one, I think we showed 165. So decent upgrade, and to be honest, having driven it on out and about here on its, should we say, budget 185 tyres on a damp greasy road, you just don't want no more torque. It's got about what it can comfortably cope with anyway. So yeah, on that bombshell, all there is to do is for you guys to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, and I'll back this out and leave you with the graph. See you later, guys.